That's such a great question. My mother, who is a prominent feature in my memoir because she was so central to every aspect of my emotional life, my intellectual life, my development, was actually someone who, as a white woman in West Texas, growing up in a Southern Baptist, very racist, very sexist, oppressive community, and spending her a young life from literally through college. She went to college in the town she grew up in, which was a Southern Baptist college. And so she was in this very closed environment, but she was so smart, so curious, and so talented that she used debate to get herself out of Texas, because a woman could be a debater. And in fact, she debated on the men's debate team. I say that, though, because actually she told me this, after I decided I was going to go to law school. She said, I was always choosing between either art or law. And so she was also someone who was an illustrator. That was also something women were allowed to do. And she always loved art. And so from my earliest memories, my parents met at Syracuse University, and my mother was in graduate school there. And my father came as a young professor not long after his PhD in organic chemistry, believe it or not. But she was a writer. English literature was her area, but visual art was her passion. And all her friends around her when I was born were artists, in addition to activists. In fact, a lot of the activists were also artists. And so in my house to this day, I have a life-size statue that a friend of hers made and gave it to her for safekeeping, that I grew up with my entire life. And everyone always thought it was my mother. They thought she sat for the sculpture. She didn't. But the point is, we were always surrounded by art. When we had a family activity that was not protest, it was going to a museum or a gallery, because it was such a part of my mother's life. And so much so that when I was in college, I'll never forget this. I call her up just to talk to her one weekend, and she said, "Oh, yeah, by the way, I'm buying the Franz Bader Gallery." And she actually became a gallery owner. And I was like, "Wait, what? Excuse me?" She went from being a management consultant doing affirmative action programs to owning an art gallery, because she never left art. And she was one of those people who taught me in so many ways by her own example that you can be all these things. Like, activism was a deep part of her life. Third-party politics was an issue. She was writing a third-party platform for Dr. Spock as she was helping to found a monthly arts magazine in Washington, D.C. She was, actively engaged in gallery life, and then opening an art gallery as she was doing all these other parts of herself. And so for us, she served on a board of directors for the National Storytelling Association, because she loves storytelling. So, she avid book reader, avid reader of all novels, Daedalus books. I wanted to take it from her at a certain point in my life, because I was like, you got to stop having all these books come in my house, because we were living together, and I was like, I don't have any more space. So every form of art, was important to her, and it was such a wonderful experience to have a mother who was so engaged in so many ways in the world, and then didn't see any boundaries between poetry, literature, painting, sculpture, old-fashioned folk arts and folk storytelling, and social activism and politics. So it was it was just so infused in our house visually. She had all kinds of artist friends who just kept giving her stuff to hold before she ever had an art gallery. So even in my house today, I have inherited all this amazing, beautiful art from my mother, who's passed away now. But and my brother went to art school. He went to Cooper Union. He's an amazing painter. I have his paintings all over my house. Photographer and graphic designer. So he was really multi-talented. But he also, like my mother, very politically engaged. And he has been working for Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez for almost 2 decades now, and doing essentially an extension of community organizing as a field director for her. But he has never left the arts either, and his partner is a videographer and a musician. So there's still all kinds of ways in which, particularly political art, he became a conceptual artist because he could talk about housing policy and segregation in his art. So even as an artist, he was like my mother, blending the two.